Welcome back to World Traveler Cooking, the show where we create interesting dishes and study interesting cuisines from around the world. Now today we're going to make a German classic in the style of certain parts of far west Germany. We are going to make Sauerbraten. Now Sauerbraten literally means sour roast. And this dish comes out of, as far as I can tell, far western Germany. And it's originally made out of horse meat. And people would eat horses when they would get old and no longer able to work, kind of like people send them to glue factories today. But the problem with eating meat from old animals is it's very tough. Sorry for the background noise. There is still some construction going on next door. And so this technique became used for doing this. And nowadays, most of Germany, they use beef instead. But I'm going to do it in the old style, and I think there are a few parts of Germany that still do it this way with horse meat today. So, we have, for a kilogram of horse meat, we have 2 onions, a slice of celery root that I have peeled, 2 cloves of garlic, 2 carrots, 2 bay leaves, then I have 2 cloves, 5 juniper berries, and 10 peppercorns. Now, you can omit the juniper berries if you can't find them, but juniper berries are used in a lot of German cooking, so good to get them if you can. We'll also add 400 milliliters of red wine and 200 milliliters of red wine vinegar. This will go relatively quickly, and we need to set this aside for a week to marinate. So, if you're going to make this dish, make sure you plan a week in advance. So, let's get started. One thing, so you can do this with stainless steel or you can do it with glass. Don't do it with anything else. I'm just going to put a little bit of a bed of the veggies on the bottom. Getting a nice representative bit of all the veggies. Then I'm just going to dump these seasonings in place. Normally this should be done with a single large roast, but interestingly enough, that's a harder thing to come by in Indonesia than you might expect. But we'll pretend this is a nice large piece of meat. It may be several smaller pieces. And then we'll basically cover it with the rest of the veggies. I forgot to add salt, so I will add, I'll just salt this down, maybe a teaspoon or 2. And then I will add my 400 milliliters of red wine. And this will be followed by 200 milliliters of red wine vinegar. So in goes the 200 milliliters of red wine vinegar. Then we're going to cover this. I'm also going to put something in place to kind of helps make sure as much of this is submerged as possible. That looks good. And I'll be back in a week. So go in the refrigerator. So now this has been in the refrigerator for a week. And you can definitely smell the vinegar now that I've uncovered it. We have assembled our other ingredients for the roast. Just to move this aside, you can see them. 2 onions, somewhere around 100 grams of like a nice dark rich bread, a couple tablespoons of honey, and a good sized handful, like about a 1/4 cup. It's like 4 tablespoons or so of raisins. So I'm going to chop the onions next, and we'll have a little bit of oil in addition, and we'll go ahead and get things started. Actually, better to use animal fat than oil. Into our hot pan, we will add a couple tablespoons of fat. Shake this around. Nice hot pan, I see. So turning down the oil, adding onions. So while I brown the onions here, I'm also preheating the oven. You can, at least in theory, cook this on the stovetop, but I found that if you do that, you really want to use probably like a stainless steel pan, just because this is fairly acidic and you might get a metallic flavor. Extra iron in your diet, I suppose. But so I'm going to go ahead and let this cook for just a few minutes. I'll be back once these are starting to brown. The onions are cooking down and browning, so I'm going to turn up the heat a little bit. And I'm going to add the actual roast. I got lucky. This is mostly in one piece, but I have two smaller pieces here, so I will just put them in two. And we will sear these. Once this has darkened, I'll go ahead and put it in the roasting pan, and we will go ahead and make the rest of our marinade. So, in goes the meat, and then I will add these onions around. Now, normally Germans would probably use like a roast, it's called a Bratpfand, I think, basically a sort of a roast broth, but I don't have that here, so I'm actually going to just use water, but I will add a little more salt. So let's just scrape this off to the side. In goes the water. I'm using 300 milliliters today. It'd probably use a little less, like 200. I'm going to add my raisins at this point. I'm not going to add the bread yet, but I am going to add a bit of salt, just because since I don't have the broth. That should be sufficient. And now I'm going to cover this and put it in the oven for about 2 hours. And so here is everything after it's been in the oven for 2 hours. So I'm going to take all of this liquid, I'm going to put it in a pot, and I'll move the meat onto a platter. In goes our bread. And I'm using a sourdough rye today, but people tend to use sort of sweeter whole grain sourdough breads. So I think this should work with a little bit of extra honey. And this is here to thicken up the sauce. We'll turn on the burner. Well, I'll move it onto a smaller burner, turn it on. But first I'm going to add my honey. So just a couple tablespoons of honey. And then we're going to blend this with a hand blender and then put it back on. I'll be back after the hand blender is done. Now we'll just bring this to a boil to thicken it. In the meantime, I will cut the meat. So this is thickened up nicely. So I'm going to do a quick taste test, then I'll be back for some photography. And now for the taste test. So the horse meat is still pretty tough, but it's quite edible. The flavor profile is really nice. It's a bit sweet, a little bit sour, not very sweet, kind of more fruity. Very rich. All in all, I really like this, but I'd probably make it with beef next time. I think I'd save horse meat for some other dishes, which we'll try another time. Now, if you find this content interesting and you'd like to see more of it, please like, share, and subscribe. If you have anything to say about this video, please let me know in the comments below. As always, recipes in the description. Bon appetit, and see you next week.